prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. This call is from Lyle May. An inmate at Central Prison. This call will be monitored and recorded.
My name is Lyle May. I've been incarcerated in North Carolina since the age of 19 in 1997. I was sentenced to death in 1999 and have been on death row ever since. For the last 23 years, I've not been idle. I've managed to earn an associate's in arts degree with a social science emphasis from Ohio University, and I'm currently enrolled in a bachelor's specialized studies degree in criminal justice administration. Outside of education, I am a prison journalist. I cover all things prisons and criminal justice reform.
Ohio University has had a correspondence program for incarcerated students since 1974, and it's probably one of the longest running programs in the U.S. Over time, it's changed. Right now, we offer 2 bachelor's degrees and several associate degrees. Generally, the lessons are mailed back and forth between the professor and the student. Our office is kind of like the middleman. We receive and send lessons, we take care of the exams, and we deal with the proctors at the prisons, the people who are responsible for administering the exam. Or if you look at the students that I have as my advisees, they reside in jails, juvenile centers, state prisons, federal prisons, under all different types of conditions. And it's just an interesting group of people to get to know and to encourage to get their education.
At this point, I'm of the opinion that you have to be intentionally not paying attention to not know that this is a system that has preyed on a very specific part of our society. The jail is the only one where when I walk into it, I see primarily people of color. Hopefully the education that they're getting in prison is an education that they should have been able to get on the outside, before even going to prison. And that might have been the case if there weren't so many structural barriers intentionally put in place so that they would end up in prison.
I think outside of that, like, education is, so like my life as a black man, like, it wouldn't have any value, my personal opinion, it wouldn't have any value just because of the way society views black life. There's a term that they say 3 strikes and you're out. That means 3 felony convictions and you're sentenced to life in prison. I use that analogy in a different way. I say, I was born with 1 strike. I was born black, and that was my first strike in America. My second strike was that I was convicted of a felony offense. Regardless if it was my first and only felony conviction, I got a felony, so I got 2 strikes. The only thing that's stopping me from my 3rd strike is my pursuit of higher education.
I'm incredibly fortunate to have been able to pursue a degree program, to have had the sponsorship that enabled me to do so. Most people don't have that opportunity, and that is unfortunate. I mean, that is almost criminal in the sense that you incarcerate people and then you expect them to do better when they get out, but then you don't provide them with the tools they need on their way out. You just warehouse them, and that's a problem. That's why there are high recidivism rates. My pursuit of higher education and the courses that I select have been really geared toward practical applications in prison. Every course I've chosen, with the exception of those that have been general education requirements, have been geared toward helping me understand prison, the criminal justice system, and my place within it.
I just think in general, learning, whether it's math, science, the arts, learning it in a classroom isn't the end of that application, right? Like we're learning, all of these things to go and do something greater with this acquired knowledge. And, when I say greater, I mean applying applying it in a way that is of service to just our communities. I would love for them to have never been in a position where they were, their education was one that had to um, um, occur inside the carceral state. I don't know if prison education fits into my vision for a more just society. I think that that's something that should be able to happen outside of prison. I mean, I think that prison education is, I kind of feel like it's a Band-Aid. I don't think the goal is to have a great prison education program. I think the goal is to fix the system.
Generally speaking, the pandemic has shut down life on death row. We've been on a modified lockdown since roughly March.
In March, we began working at our homes because our university decided that it was better that we stay at home if we could work from home.
When the pandemic hit the U.S., I was actually in the middle of co-teaching a class at the women's facility at Rikers Island, and we essentially had to shut down operations. So that class that I was teaching, came to an end for a while. We tried to make it a correspondence course, but eventually all communication essentially stopped. That was in the spring of 2020.
Largely, there has been a huge reduction in staff, and the result has been less access to the things that we would normally have access to. It justifies many of the draconian safety measures that they've put in place. Also, they've eliminated all programs. They've reduced the number of visits from initially 4 15-minute video visits a month to one video visit a month, or one 30-minute in-person visit a month. Prior to the pandemic, there were no video visits.
COVID-19 impacted me in several ways. Before that, I used to visit the prison monthly. I had one of my co-authors, Lyle May. I would visit him every month for 2 hours. We had an in-person visit. There's a plexiglass there, but we were at least able to meet face-to-face. After COVID, they completely, for the first few months, shut down visitations altogether. And then they reinstituted this virtual visitation where you get 15 minutes instead of 2 hours. And when I did it with Lyle, the connection was so bad. It was basically like staring at a frozen screen. We couldn't really even have a conversation during that time. Basically, we went from 2-hour visits every month to nothing, no visits at all.
I think that prisons may even be a little bit relieved that they don't have visits anymore, that everything is very limited. They don't have volunteers coming in. It's less work for them in that sense, I think, but it's a real disadvantage. And I don't think the pandemic has done much except make the prisons tighten up on security, because if they can call it security, there is absolutely nothing that, rises above that.
I'm now in the fall 2020 semester, and we have started teaching again. So I'm back teaching with students at Rikers, but obviously the due to all the constraints and restrictions surrounding safety, in light of our current situation with COVID-19, the interaction with that I have with the students is much different much different from what it was before.
When a prison goes on lockdown, or when just a couple days ago I heard that my student went into quarantine for 2 weeks at least, they don't get to take their books with them. You know, they're just moved or locked down without their supplies a lot of times. In some places, the prisons have excused the volunteers who may work with students, proctor for them and, you know, consult with them. In other places, the staff that was helping out the students has been reassigned because they're needed elsewhere.
How things have changed since the pandemic is that I'm currently, again, in my fourth semester teaching a creative writing, what should be a creative writing seminar. But what has happened is that due to the pandemic and not being able to be in the same room, we're essentially utilizing a online program where I can upload things to this program, to this service, and the students have tablets that they can use to download that information on their end at a designated time during the day.
The professors aren't allowed to go inside the facilities anymore for in-class teaching. They have to send their lectures in advance through a typed up version of their lecture for whatever that session or week might be, and then the facility distributes it to the incarcerated population.
Our office has actually given everybody enrolled for courses an extra 4 months, kind of like a COVID extension. So we did, and we sent letters to the students, but they didn't all get them. So some of the students didn't know right away that they had an extra 4 months, and they were extra worried. But one way or another, maybe through their advocates, their relatives or friends, we got the word to them. So I think most of our students are aware now. They have extra time. And we'll still work with them. You know, if it extends even longer, we'll make sure they finish their courses.
And so when the pandemic happened and I really began talking with university groups in earnest, I kind of felt like it was more of a level playing field than it had ever been, because now I was limited to the same kind of communication that pretty much everybody else, every other student was, and found myself kind of really excelling. I'm always fearful that, you know, some new restriction will be put in place by the prison system, and of course that is always the threat, and I guess it is like always going to be my disadvantage in relation to other students. There have been kind of different opportunities developed through the phone, and that's mostly on your side of things. It was mid to late February where we discovered that calling to a person's phone on the outside, who then logged into a Zoom meeting, would enable us on the inside to kind of somewhat participate in that Zoom meeting, and that has been interesting. Before the pandemic, I guess I need to backtrack a little bit. Before the pandemic, I had done maybe half a dozen speaking engagements by calling into university classes and talking with criminal justice classes, students, about the death penalty, higher education in prison, writing, and things of that nature. But after the pandemic, these Zoom meetings became kind of the way of things for these classes. And once we made the discovery, and by we, I mean Tessie Castillo, who's a co-author for the project that we collaborated on, Crimson Letters, Writing from Death Row. Once she made a discovery that we could participate in these Zoom meetings like this, it became just a matter-of-fact thing that we would call and do these podcasts and Zoom meetings with university classes.
And our goal right now is to spread that message to other people through events where my co-authors call in from prison, through book clubs where people actually have the opportunity to speak to them directly, we want people to understand the level of intelligence and humility and accountability that exists within the prison, and to challenge stereotypes that they may have. The book club, I believe, is something that would not have happened if it were not for COVID. I don't think it would have not occurred to me to do something like that. Also, reaching out to podcasts is something that I've had to start doing since COVID, because of COVID. And that's also been one of our most successful ways of getting the message out that I wouldn't have thought of because of COVID. So in that sense, I feel like it's been a good thing for us.
I think it gave us access to more people and made it even easier for us to communicate with them. And I believe that is crucial, not only for promotion of the project Crimson Letters, but also in helping people understand the needs of people in prison and helping them grasp our humanity.
People in prison are thought of as less than, and people who have been released from prison are thought of as less than. And until we cancel that, it's going to be difficult for them to reintegrate into society.
Every time that we have these really strong misconceptions about other people as being less than us, it not only dehumanizes them, but it dehumanizes us too. And so anytime that you can challenge that for any group of people, prisoner or not, I think you become a better, more conscious person, and the world becomes a little bit better by just having more bonding and more commonality between us.
There are a lot of fellow citizens who are locked up right now, who are, who have been given up on, by a lot of society. When I say given up, I mean, it's almost as if they've just been wiped off the face of the earth. They're gone. That's how it can be seen by folks, who aren't paying attention. So again, for me, it's about showing up.
I certainly appreciate any opportunity to convey my experiences to the public and help them understand the lives of people who are incarcerated. These are not holes in the ground. We do not disappear when you put us in prison. We are still here. We're still thinking, feeling human beings who would like nothing more than to prove that to you.